Hello, I'm back doing another post commentary video. So, this is gameplay that I've already previously recorded, and I'm using the Bulwark Dark Angels champion. And I'm going in here to the armory to make sure that I have everything set up. That's the heroic power sword. I do have it unlocked, but I ended up sticking with the fencing version of the power sword one. So, I believe that's to apply the skin, and another is I do enjoy the fencing window, and I need the extra, forgiveness there when it comes to parrying enemy attacks. And I also like applying that Dark Angel skin that goes with it. And I feel like it's a little bit more on theme. It helps me kind of stick into the power fantasy when playing the Bulwark Dark Angel. Now, probably heard it before, but I really do like the Dark Angels, so I was really happy when this champion skin came out. I felt like the game was speaking to me, like, hey, here's one for you, big guy. And so I jumped on it right away. I believe they were the first champion skin as well, besides the one that came with the launch of the game, which is the Ultramarine Heavy. There's a champion skin for the Heavy Ultramarine. But then after that, I think it was the Bulwark, and it was Dark Angels. And so I'm did a game in progress here, and but it's not that far along. This is the beginning of the mission, and throughout the gameplay, you're gonna see there's nothing too crazy going on here. The stratagem was if you shout for the Emperor, you get a buff. And as far as the negatives go, I don't remember if there was a negative or anything that was too impactful. Maybe it was there was no extra life or something. I forget. Or maybe you could damage your opponents with or your teammates with explosions, something like that. But I know I didn't do anything too bad here. And so there you go. You can see, this is very forgiving. This is normal mode, so the enemies will go down faster. And when I'm playing this game, oh, there you go. The enemies have a shield that makes them unkillable for a while. And I really do like, using the parry weapon on the Bulwark, especially the fasting. It has the fastest swing speed, I believe, of the melee weapons at 9, and it's a fencing weapon. So when you think in Dark Angel Blade Guard champion like this, you know, you would kind of imagine a guy who's never gonna take a hit. He's just constantly parrying, expert with the blade. And so I feel like the fencing weapon helps keep that power fantasy alive. And speaking of Blade Guard veterans, I do have. I recently purchased the Combat Patrol box from my local game Warhammer store. They had one in stock finally, and it lined up with a payday weekend, and I jumped on it right away. And so I have a grand total of 20 intercessors, 15 hellblasters, 3 Blade Guard veterans, and a captain in Gravis armor. And let's not forget, I do have a Lionel Johnson figure, just hanging out. I have not attempted to paint him yet, but I will. I will get to him. My 10 intercessors are done. They need to be based. All my models need to be based right now. And I hope I didn't mess up anything too bad. I did kind of see a mistake with one guy where I really wanted to make one of the Marines have like a pistol at the ready. Kind of in my head, I know it doesn't happen often, but sometimes it's necessary that Space Marines, kind of have to drop their bolter and kind of reach for their sidearm. And that was what I was kind of going for. But then I don't know if on the tabletop that's going to affect, his range, or, I think you move these guys in at least groups of 5. So I don't know. So if anybody knows can answer that, let me know. if I made a mistake there, maybe I can break off the empty arm, the empty hand, and put something that's holding like a bolt rifle. And so, but other than that, they are painted up. You see that here. I'm pretty proud of them. They're ready to go once I get those bases done. And I do have 2 Hellblasters done, and I think I did okay with them as well. I did kind of make a mistake of making them both sergeants, and the idea was, eventually I'm going to paint all 10 of these Hellblasters in the box. But the combat patrol only calls for 5 Hellblasters, and I got 3 ready to go here. I'm working on their weapons, and they're all gonna have standard shoulders, rookie shoulders, as if they just hit the fleet. And so I'm thinking to myself, I hope that doesn't cause a problem as well. If anything, I'll just have to paint up a Hellblaster real fast to replace one of the sergeants. And so that'll just leave me with the Blade Guard veterans, and those are my next project, because I'm fairly confident I will finish these extra 3 Hellblasters, maybe 2-3 hours tomorrow. And so I will start using the new glue that I bought. I bought the Tamiya glue with the little brush and extra thin cement to put the Blade Guards together. And I do have some of the new paints, like the Seraphim Sepia Shade and the Ushabti Bone. So we'll have to get that going. And I've seen a few guides and I said that these are actually easier to paint because the all white it looks harder than it actually is. And so we'll see how that comes out. But I know they're considered Deathwing as well, so that's why they get to wear the white color. But I'm a little confused because I thought Deathwing were always Terminators, which was like the whole thing about the first company of the Dark Angels. They were the Deathwing, and they all wore Terminator armor. And the Dark Angels were so well stocked, so well equipped, that their armory was just kind of heads and shoulders above other Space Marine chapters, that they were able to outfit every single member of their first company in Terminator armor. But I'm guessing with the new Codex rules from Bute's revival, maybe some way that there's alterations to the Codex. Maybe that's why they've been letting non-Terminator veterans use the Deathwing theme in their color scheme. Or maybe that's always been that way. Maybe it's like a personal preference of the individual Space Marines that work in the Deathwing. So yeah, after these 3 guys, these 3 Blade Guard veterans, I will get to work on the Gravis Captain in Gravis armor. And once he's painted up, I am ready to go for a combat patrol game. I don't have anybody to play with, so hopefully, there is that tournament going on at my Warhammer store. But I think it's way too late to enter into the running. It's been going on for about 4 weeks now, because I think it started on January 7th. January 17th, I'm not sure. So it could be been going on for 2 or 3 weeks. It could be going on for longer. I gotta kind of double check on that. But either way, I think it's you get points based on how many matches you've won, and I don't think you can play the same guy twice or something like that. But if I'm already 3-4 weeks behind, I don't think I'd be able to catch up enough points. But that's fine. There's another hobby store that's local to me that has a weekly, not a weekly, but like a build-up tournament that they run to completion and then they start over again, and it starts off with the combat patrol, and then they said that the following week, they increase it by so many points. They give you some time to paint up a couple of models, and then the following week, they increase the point um, limit even more, and by the end of it, I think you have a full 2,000 point army going at it with another full 2,000 point. Now, I don't know if that means you win combat patrol, which I think is about 500 points, and then you have an opportunity to come in to the bigger fight with more. And then the two last man standing are the ones who are going at it with a 2,000 point army. But I'm not there yet, anyways. And I know there's the standard combat patrol, and then there's also like recommended like armies for the different Space Marines. Like if you're going to be playing Blood Angels, they tell you how many, what do they call themselves, the Sanguinary Guard to take, and which heroes you should take. Like, do you really want to put Dante on the field? Is he really worth the points, or should you put the other guys? And I know we have Azrael and the Dark Angels, and we have Lionel Johnson, and there's another guy, the guy on the motorbike. I don't know his name. I'm a bad Dark Angels fanboy there, I guess. But yeah, so there's a list, an army list that has more. I know there's people who like collect the data. I got the gene seed there on what's winning and what's losing. And so I don't know. I don't know how well the Dark Angels Combat Patrol does. It's 10 intercessors, which from what I'm hearing is like the most basic unit of a Space Marine. Checking out the Emperor's Scythe guy there. I recognize the Emperor's Scythe because there's like a fan-made video called like Astartes, and I guess this guy did so well creating that fan-made video that the Amazon or maybe not Amazon, but the Warhammer Plus, put some money into this guy, and he's gonna direct like 5 or 10 episodes, and it's called like Astartes 2. They did a preview of it, but I do remember one of those was the Scythe of the Emperor. And I'm just reading this book too, the Plague Wars book, the Plague War book between Mortarion and Gilliman, and I just finished the second book, and I got into the third one, but I forget if it was towards the end of the second book or the beginning of this third one. They were mentioning the Scythe of the Emperor in the Scourge Stars area. I think that's the area. That they've lost their home planet, and they're kind of ashamed of it. And Gilliman has been trying to replenish their numbers with Primaris Marines, and there's a little bit of a shame in their chapter right now. For losing the ground that they've lost over the years. And there was another video that I watched on lore that I guess the Scythes of the Emperor also kind of like not pirates, but they're like very quid pro quo type of deals. When it comes to the planets that they protect, they expect their tithes paid, or maybe like a little bit more, added to the coffers, for their protection. It could be mistaken, but I thought I read something along those lines. So, just a fun fact. And in the book, I just got past this section where Gilliman was talking to a demon of Tzeentch. He had its true name, and there was this Grey Knight, Captain Grood, however you want to say it, and an Eldar Farseer in the room as well, along with Felix, and they were interrogating this possessed man, and the Tzeentch demon inside of him. If if you read the book, you know, the audience has the advantage of knowing that the damn thing was telling the truth. You know, it wasn't really speaking in riddles. You know, it was kind of giving, uh, I wouldn't say halfway answers, but you know, not very clear answers. You know, but it was speaking kind of the truth. You know, it did mention that they had Gilman's blood, and that the the new plague, or you know, that they're making on this Iax planet, Pestiliax, you know, that it can actually kill the Primarch, you know, and that so there was some truth there. I don't know how much Gilman is gonna believe, you know, so I don't know where the irony is gonna hit in the story, but I did find that interesting. Um, that kind of stuff is happening in the book right there, you know, that Gilman is willing to, you know, actually speak to a demon for information. And I don't know how I got off sidetracked with that tangent, because I know I was talking about the Sets of the Emperor and this, that, and the other, but you know, the Scourge Stars, and I think Typhus is going to be fighting there. So I wonder how that's all going to play out. I don't know how far the books have advanced. I don't know if these are the most recent books in time, or I got to read something from the Titus stuff. But I've been jumping into this franchise, you know, on all angles. You know, play the game, reading the books, buying the minis, and I just wish I had one of those brains that retained information, because it's in one ear and out the other. You know, I'm reading these books, quick pace, but then you want to talk to about events that happen in this book or the other, and I'm just like, did that happen? And I got through all of the Horus Heresy books, and I shouldn't say all, but got through about 9 different books. You know, and the Siege of Terra ones, and then the End of the Death, the trilogy of the End of the Death, and you know, so. But man, it's already starting to fade. You know, it's fading knowledge. You know, like for instance, like the Dark Angels during the Siege of Terra, I guess they were, you know, they were protecting a mountain, you know, and that mountain ends up being the Astronomicon, or yeah, right, the beacon of the Astronomicon, or like a proto version of it. And you know, it's kind of funny how, I think her name is Euphrates Keeler, like that first saint, you know, or one of them, but she ends up like linking up with Sigismund, and they end up marching up to the mountain, which is kind of weird, because if you're reading the books, you find out that like nothing is where it's supposed to be, that the planet is like so engrossed with the warp that like the distance and time, it's not meaning anything anymore, because everything is just so warp infused, and the veil between reality and the immaterium is so thin, you know, that you know, they feel like they've been walking for days, but it could have been hours. They felt like they were walking for hours, but it could have been days. But either way, you know, the Imperial Fists under Sigismund, who are now pretty religious at this point, or at least they kind of see the divinity of the Emperor, you know, or at least some kind of divine energy, some divine purpose at this point. You know, they're walking with that saint chick, and they end up some chick, you know, oh my god, I'm gonna get canceled. But you know, they end up coming up onto the mountain that Typhus is attacking, and it's being protected by a bunch of dark angels, and they're trying to get the beacon lit, so that way even more people, I think there was the Rock was out in space, not the Rock, the Imperial Fists, you know, their Death Star, I forget what its name, you know, but Rogel Dorn has a very giant, practically like space station, like floating thing out in space, it can't see into the solar system because of how bad the warp storms are. And you know, the reason I'm talking about this is because I'm a big Dark Angels fan, and I kind of was wondering, like, did the Dark Angels do anything for the Siege of Terra? You know, like, was there any significant contributions? I know Horus sent Lionel Johnson to like the far edges of space because he didn't want to have him involved, but you know, you kind of wonder, was like, did anything special happen? And it turns out there was some Dark Angels, and you know, their librarians were the ones who lit the beacon, and you know, it's why you know, one of the first instances of a miracle happening, because then Keeler shows up with all these faithful people, and they're all praying, and it lights up the temple, you know, the runes on the walls and stuff like that, even though they're not psychics. So I don't know. It's a big tangent, but it has nothing to do with my minis, and it has nothing to do with this gameplay. But you know, it's just the lore that's there is awesome. Man. If you haven't read these books, you got it, got it. But yeah, here's the end of the mission. I'm going to let the rest of the video play out, you know, and hope you're enjoying the minis that I've got going on, and I'll keep you guys updated. And we're getting back into the swing of things here. The Christmas break was really kind of, you know, discombobulated things around here, and then I was completely, you know, entranced with painting. So I was spending hours here, you know, painting, and by the time I even have time to play the game, it's already late at night. But you know, I don't want to mess up my sleeping schedule too much. So you know, that's why I was kind of foregoing the gameplay and then the recording session after. And but I'm gonna get back on this. You know, I want to keep the updates coming your way, and maybe we can start talking about the new Tech Marine that came out in the test server, and the new weapons that are coming out. And if you've been paying attention to news, you know, I think I've mentioned this before in a previous video, but as far as Chaos Space Marines go and Chaos Primarchs, you know, I was a huge fan of the Iron Warriors, their philosophy. I like how they don't really like the gifts from the big four, and how they don't like mutations, and they're kind of still pretty vanilla when it comes to how they operate. And that Perturabo, you know, I like that he gets to see the flaw in things. Like, that's one of his Primarch abilities. He can see like flaws in the universe, and that's how he's able to recreate, you know, technologies, because he can see how things aren't working, or what's inefficient, or where the failure is, and he can improve it. And so, you know, the news is that they're coming out soon. Now, there hasn't been an announcement for a Chaos Ascended or a Demon Primarch version of Perturabo from what I've seen in the news, but I'm still holding out hope that, you know, that's going to be their big reveal for products coming. So maybe I'll have to pick up those, and I'll have my Loyalist chapters with the Dark Angels, my Loyalist Space Marines, I mean, and then my Chaos Space Marines, and kind of, you know, see what car I want to drive that day when I go play these games. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.